Hello, good morning. Good morning, class.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Okay. So I want to believe that everybody is hearing me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you have seen the. I've also seen the YouTube link, isn't it?
No, sir. We're not seeing anything.
You have not seen the
We've seen it,
YouTube
sir.
link. You have seen it.
Sir.
I've seen it, sir.
You have
Yes,
not.
sir, we've seen it.
Okay,
I've
you
not
have
seen
seen
mine.
the.
Yeah.
Check. It is there. I keep pasting. I've
Yes.
all seen.
Yes, sir. We've seen it, sir.
So you can send to your friends. You can send to all your friends, because some of them are already telling me that like Olatunji is already telling me that it needs to be enabled. So are we set? Are we set?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're ready.
I want to beg everyone to please
Ready, sir.
mute yourself. If you don't, I'll mute all of you together.
So we have muted it.
To
Okay,
mute
sir, I've muted it.
all of you, mute yourself, or I will mute it for you permanently, and you will not be able to talk. Is it okay? I'm still hearing noise at the background. I said everyone should mute themselves so that I give you opportunity. If you want to ask questions, if you want to say something, you can always raise up your hand to say. But at the same time, I've also sent the link for the YouTube live stream. So for those of your friends, you can contact them too. Please help them too. So we are starting right away. This is 8 or 2 minutes after 8. So we are starting the class. I'm sharing the slide. Can we all see the slide?
Yes,
We all seeing the slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please, we are in class now. We have started. The recording has started. Everything has started. Everything has started. Once again, I want to say good morning to all of us present, both in the Zoom link, and also on the live stream on the YouTube. So today we are still a continuation of FSC113. And please, I want to encourage each and every one of us to always know the course code, because some of us will always forget. We forget the course code, and when it's time for exam or when it's time for other things, that is when we'll now be asking some of our friends, what is the course code? What is the course code? So the course code is FSC113, and the course title is Introduction to Computer Science. That is the course title. The course title is Introduction to Computer Science. So I'm going to be your course instructor for this study session 2 and 5. So I'll be your course instructor, and my name is Dr. Ufoma Siri Ogude, Department of Computer Science. Department of Computer Science. So that is a brief introduction of the course and myself. Now we have course materials available. We have course materials available, and it's a textbook, and it's a textbook. So it is called for Computer Fundamentals and Visual Basic Language. It's written by the Department of Computer Science, University of Lagos. You should also note too that you should use lecture slide as a study guide. That means after the lectures, your lecturers will always send you the lecture slide, or you can ask. So the lecture slide is to act as a study guide in helping you to understand the course properly. So the textbook is available at the University Bookshop or Department of Computer Science. But you have to come to the computer science department. There you see it. The textbook is available at the Department of Computer Science. And don't forget that each student will have to fill and submit the workbook, which comes with the textbook. Please take note of that. Each student will have to fill and submit the workbook, which comes with the textbook. So once again, this is study session 2. Study session 2, we are going to be looking at classification of computers, classifications of computers. And I believe in your previous study section, which was study section 1, you must have dealt much on the definition of a computer. So we'll go straight to study session 2 that has to do with classifications of computers. Now, there's a learning outcome for this study section, which means what you are supposed to know or what you are to know. What you are to know. The learning outcomes for this study session 2, says at the end of this study session, you should be able to know the various generations of computers. The various generations, you should be able to know the various generations of computers and the years that each of them were developed, or the years that each came into existence. That is what you are expected to know at the end of this study session 2. And at the same time, you have to understand the characteristics of each generation. Each of those generations has their own characteristics. So it's expected that at the end of the study session, you should know the characteristics of each generation. And you should also know the classifications. You should know the classification of the computers. So at the end of this section, at the end of this study session, you're able to know the classification of computers. And you're able to understand the classifications according to the type of data they process. You're able to understand the functionality classification according to functionalities and purpose. And at the end of the day, at the end of the study sessions, you're able to know the general characteristics of a computer. You know the general characteristics of a computer. So this is our presentation outline for this study session today. Presentation outline for our study session this morning. So first of all, we are going to look at the generations of computers. The generations. You said? Somebody saying something? So this is the presentation outline, how the study session 2 will be presented. First, it's going to be in very
Please, sir. Please, sir, can you go back to that what we have to know?
Okay. Don't worry, you get the slide. You get the slide. This is the learning outcome. I said this is the learning outcome for study section 2. I hope you are following. So, okay, you have seen it. I said at the end of this study session, you should be able to know the various generations of computers and the years. And at the same time, you should understand the characteristics, the peculiarities, the features of each of those generations. Then you should know the classification of computer, understand the classification according to type of data process, functionalities and purpose. Then you should be able to know the general characteristics of computer. Then I said that this is our presentation outline for study session 2. This is study session 2. The study outlines is basically in 2 parts. The first one is generations of computers. Generations of computers. Under generation of computer, we have first generation of computer, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, and the future generation. Then after that, we have classification of computer, classification according to type of data they process, classification according to functionalities, and classification according to purpose. Then we'll move on. We start our class. And in our introduction, you should know, just as I said earlier on, that you must have studied section 1. In your study section 1, you did more on the historical development of computers and their generations. So, and you also talked about the definition of computers, so on and on. So don't forget that in the history of computer development could be linked to different generations of computing devices. Now, each of those generations of computer is characterized by some major breakthrough, and the materials used in older generation are improved upon in subsequent generation. We all know that's for instance, in the second generation transistors, in the second generation, the transistors replace the vacuum, replace the vacuum tube. So you should also know that the development of computers from one period, when you're talking of period, you're talking of time, from one time to another, from years to years. So from one period to another is what is known as what? As generations of computers. That means that the development of computer for one period, that is from one particular year, from one time to another, is what is known as generation of computer. And you also know that the growth of the computer development is being divided into 5 generations. And each of those generations reflects the progress made as far as improving the performance of machines. Now, this is the first generation of computer. The first generation of computer. So this is how the first generation computer look like. And remember, in our outcome, we said you should be able to know the generation of computers and the years. The years is very important too. So that is why in this slide we said the first generation of computer was from 1946 to 1959. 1946 to 1959. And if you look at the first generation of computers, they used a vacuum tube. And you can see in the picture, you can see the diagram, you can see in the picture, you can see how a vacuum tube look like. You can see how it looked like. Now, the first generation of computer, as we said is from 1946 to 1959. We said this is the first period of generation, which is from 1946 to 1959. We said it used the vacuum tube as a basic component for the memory, and circuitry and the basic component for the memory, which is what we call the CPU, present CPU, which is what we refer to as the present CPU. So you should try as much as possible to always remember the technology behind the generations, each of those generations. You try as much as possible to always remember the technology behind it. And we said in the first generation of computers, the technology behind it were the vacuum tube. So the vacuum tube. I hope you are following.
Yes, sir.
So please, you should know the year. Remember, I said
Yes, sir.
Remember, I said one of the things you are expected to know is that you know the generation,
and the years,
and the basic technology behind the development. So who will be able who will tell me the technology behind the first generation now?
vacuum tubes.
Vacuum tube.
Okay, so the vacuum tube is what we refer to as what in this our dispensation? What was it acting as?
Technology.
As a what?
Technology.
CPU. What we refer to as the present CPU, central processing unit. But don't just call it, don't just call it CPU. You should pronounce it in full. Should be central processing unit. I hope we know that we are in the class. If I mute everyone, nobody will be able to express, nobody will be able to say something anymore. So it is better we maintain ourselves. Now, these are the characteristics. These are the characteristics of first generations. These are the characteristics of the first generation. We said the first one, we said the use of what? Vacuum tube, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
The use of the characteristic of first generation is the use of what? Vacuum tube, use of magnetic drums, use of machine languages, and a very small amount of storage, space. Also make use of a punch card. Use of punch card as input output device. That's very large in size, very huge in size, and it's very slow and less reliable. It has a very slow, it's very slow and less reliable in terms of the output. But you know, since it's the first generation of computer, there's tendency at that time that it was very what? Expensive. It was very expensive, and it also used much energy. It used much energy and generates much heat. So we have examples. We have examples of first generations of computers. First generations of computer. We have examples. These are the examples. UNIVAS. So there are basically three examples there. And my own advice for you, my own hope, little exercise for you. Okay, my little exercise for you is that you should know the full meaning of those words. Is anybody in class to give us the full meaning of those words? Anybody in class? Omotosho and Eniola, Vincent, are you in class? Omotosho and Eniola, Vincent, are you in class? So,
Sir,
yes.
Universal automatic computer.
Said what is the full meaning?
Universal automatic computer.
Okay, but please, I want you to know the full meaning of these three words that you are saying. Examples of first generation computing device. So we're going to the we're already seeing the main features, which is the same thing as the characteristics. Just try to make it. We try to make it to be explanatory enough that when you see it, you should be able to recognize the major innovation in the first generation. So the major innovation in the first generation is what? Vacuum tube. Some of us are talking in the background. I said I will mute the whole class. That means no one will be able to say something, even though when you have a question, it's difficult for you to ask. So that's why I'm asking that everybody should mute. You mute from your end. If you have any question to ask, if I ask a question and you want to answer, you cannot mute. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
so
sir.
the main feature, as we said, don't forget the main feature. Use it as a yardstick for you to be able to know each of those generations. For example, the first generation, we try to summarize it as the main feature. We try to summarize that the major innovation in the first generation was a vacuum tube. Then the main memory then was a punch card. Then the input-output device that was used in was punch card and what? Paper. And the languages that we are used and the language that we are using in the first generation was low-level machine language. And we also have operating system. He said no operating system. It's human operator that set to switch. So I will have we also gave an example of size. He said the mainframe, for example, we give an example that the mainframe, for example, which somebody have already gave us the full meaning of those devices. Then we'll move on to the advantage. It also has advantage. And the advantage of first generation is that the vacuum tube we are used as an electronic component. Then electronic data computer we are developed for the first time. So these are the advantages of the first generation, which we have already explained, which we have already talked about in the characteristics. We also said that this computer were the fastest calculating devices as at their time, devices of their time. And we said that computation will perform in milliseconds. Please, one other thing you should know, you should also try and remember at what speed were they measured the first generation. Then you go ahead to see the disadvantage. What are the disadvantages of first generation? The disadvantage, they are too large in size. They were unreliable. They increased large number of feet due to the vacuum tube. They are not portable because they are large, and they have limited commercial use. Then we'll move on to the second generation. Please don't forget what is the first generation. Can somebody still remind me what year the first generation was? What year?
1946 to
1946.
1959.
It shows that we are following. So what was the basic technology behind the first generation?
Vacuum
tubes.
Okay, that is good. So it shows that we are following. Then we look at second generations of computer. We said it's from 1959 to 1971. 1959 to 1971. And we said that the technology behind this is the transistors. Are we following?
Yes, sir.
What is the technology behind it? What is the technology behind it?
Transistors.
Yes, don't forget that. Yes. So we said, who invented the transistors?
William
Shockley.
In what year?
in 1947.
1947. So yeah, 1940. So you should take note of the second generations of computer. We said that the transistors replaced the vacuum tube in this generation. Now, as a result of this, there was an improvement, isn't it? Then the computer becomes what? Smaller, faster, cheaper, more energy efficient, and reliable. The punch card was used for input and printer. Now, let's also look at the characteristics of second generation. What are the characteristics of second generation? Now, we said it makes use of wires and harmonic values of the first generation. We are replaced with diodes and transistors. So which means in the second generation, what we used was what? The transistors. And we also say that the characteristics that it has a higher capacity internal storage. The capacity storage is higher than the first generation. Then we also say that the processor operated in microsecond. Please don't forget the speed at which the processor is operated on. Then the size we are reduced. That means the size we are reduced from the first generation. Remember, we said that the first generation computers we are very huge and what? And large. In the second generation, it was now what? It was what? Reduced. It was reduced. So, and it was there that we now introduced that the invention and use of high level languages was introduced. With the innovation and the use of high level languages were introduced, such as Fortran and COBOL. Those were the high-level programming languages that were used in the second generation. Then the other one said another characteristic in the second generation was that programs could be written in high-level languages and assemblers. For example, the basic languages we are used to translate languages. Now, the communication, of course, we should know the mode of communication at that time. So that means that at that time, in the second generation, the communication that we are using were telephone lines. The telephone lines were used in the second generation. That is when it was introduced, and there was improvement in terms of speed and reliability. Speed and reliabilities were improved more than the first generation. Then you have examples of first generation, second generation. Examples of second generation. Can somebody explain to? Can somebody say the example on the slide? Examples of second generation.
Honeywell 200,
B160.
IBM
620, IBM 1400.
Okay, all right. So please, can we mute ourselves so that we can hear very well? Mute so that we can hear. But if you want to answer a question, you can always unmute so that we can hear clearly. So these are the new features, the main features in the second generation of computers. The main features in the second generation. Remember, the major innovation in the second generation of computer was the transistors. So the transistors came into place. Transistor come as the main component. And the main memory, that's when main memory in the second generation, the RAM, ROM. Then the languages that we are used at this time were assembly language. And there's some high-level language.
Hello, sir. Please mute everybody, sir.
Okay, that's what I'm going to do now. Everybody.
Mute us, sir. We'll use the chat section. Please, sir, mute us.
Not follow simple instructions.
Off your mic, off your mic.
Okay, I hope you can hear me from them. I hope you can hear. So we are looking at the main features of the second generations. I said the main features there is listed. They are listed on the slide in terms of the major innovation, which was the transistors, the main memory that were used, which is the RAM and ROM, the input-output devices, which are the magnetic tapes and magnetic discs. Then the languages that we are used, we are assembly languages, and of course some high-level languages such as BASIC, COBOL, and Fortran. And the operating system at this time, the operating system were the human beings. So it is the human beings who handles the punch card. And these are we have very good example of second generation. We have very good example of second generation like the IBM 1400, NCR 300, IBM 1600. So we have a very good example. We have some examples of the second generation of computers. And we also have the advantages of second generation. Some of the advantages that they are smaller in size as compared to the first generation. Remember, we always say that the first generation is huge, was the biggest, very big. At times, some of them is about some of them occupy a room, if not a building. They occupy rooms. So we said that there are other advantages that is much more reliable, unlike in the first generation. Now it's less it produced less heat, or less heat is generated, and computation was performed. Computation was performed in microsecond. Then there was less hardware and maintenance problem, and it could be used for commercial purpose. Yes, somebody's raising up his hand. Okay, we said it at second generation could be used. That's when the commercial use were started. The commercial use of of generations of computers started. It started in second generations. Then the disadvantage of second generation that was at that time too, since it became used for commercial purpose, definitely it became very costly for commercial use, and it requires frequent maintenance. It requires frequent maintenance, and frequent cooling also required. So that is the second generation. Now, this is the third generations of computer. Third generations of computer. Third generations of computer. The third generation of computer, the technology behind this is integrated circuit, IC, which what we refer to integrated circuit. Integrated circuit. And integrated circuit was the technology behind the third generations of computer, which was between the period of 1964 to 1971. Somebody does not understand? Hello?
Wait.
Somebody's okay.
Yeah.
You are raising up your hand. You want to say something?
Sir, for that second generation, it was 1959 to 1971. Now, third generation is also 1974 to 1971.
Yes, of course, this third generation came in between of that period.
Okay.
Understand?
Okay.
It comes in
Yes, sir.
between. Is it clear? So please,
Yes, sir, it's clear.
I'm seeing students raising up their hand. You want to say something? So in the third generations of computers, you can see what is the basic technology in the second generation, in the third generation. What is the technology behind
Integrated circuits.
Yes.
Integrated circuits.
You can see that as I'm giving the lectures, I'm always asking what is the technology behind it? What is the technology behind it? And
Yes.
I expect each and every one of us to know it offhand. The technology behind each of those generations of computers. That is the main thing that you must know. You must know the generations of computer, and you know the technology behind it. So just as you said, the third generations of computers, you said 1964 to 1971, we said the technology behind this is integrated circuit, IC, isn't it? So we now say that the integrated circuit now replaces the what? The transistors, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So the technology is based on the use of semiconductor device called silicon chips, or what? Microprocessor. So you can, if you take note at it, you can say that the introduction of the integrated circuits drastically increases the speed. So when the IC was introduced, okay, somebody's raising up hand. You want to say something? Yes.
The first generation, wasn't it invented by anybody?
Of course, it was. Remember that time we said it was huge, isn't it? Probably we'll go back to that one to know who invented it. Who invented the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. But you can note that it is not everyone it's not people that invented it. Some came into existence as a result of what? Improvement in one to another. Are we following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
anyone that was
sir.
invented by by a particular person, always mention the person's name. So don't forget also that in the third, we have started again. We have started talking. I will mute, and you'll not be able to ask questions. And when you raise up your hand, I will not answer. So let's be quiet. You mute yourself. You can mute yourself. When you want to ask questions, you just unmute. So we said that the introduction
to off your mic.
we said that the introduction. We said that in the introduction of the integrated circuit brought about the increase in speed and efficiency of what? Computer. So it was from this third generation and the introduction of the integrated circuit that will start experiencing a high speed of computers and the efficiencies of computer. So at this level of third generation, the era of punch card and printout was phased out. Yes, somebody's raising up his hand again.
Yes, sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, concerning the second generation, what are the high-level languages that were used then?
The high-level
languages that were used then.
Okay. Did you see it? The high-level language that we are used there, Basic, COBOL, and Fortran. Is it okay?
Oh, okay, sir. Okay,
so that means some of us, we are not listening, we are not attentive in the class.
I have a question.
You cannot be asking questions while lectures is going on. We have to finish lectures, then you can ask you can note your questions down, or you feel that you can note your questions down. Then we can treat the question at the end of the lecture. At least I will create a time for us to ask questions. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
So don't forget that it was in this third, it was in this third generation that punch card and the printer we are phased out. Now we now started using keyboards and what? Monitor. We now started using keyboard and monitor with the aid of the operating system. It was at this first time computer become accessible to large audience. That's when it now became the market. It was from the third generation that computer started
off your mic now.
Accessible to the audience. So characteristics, we are still looking at characteristics of the third generation. And please always remember that in the third generation, it has a higher capacity internal storage. Please don't forget this particular processor that is operating. Are you seeing it?
Yes, sir.
I've highlighted it. I've highlighted it. Probably we'll go back to the previous one and highlight all those speed. Don't forget. Then it was at this third generation that we started having remote facility, just as we are now, remote. We are having our lectures remotely. So it was also at this third generation that we started using multi-programming facilities, and the size becomes smaller. That is when we started having smaller computers, smaller in size. Then the integrated circuit now replaces the translator.
Okay, baby, off your mic.
The woman that is carrying a baby, I've said it. I will this time around. If I mute it, I'll mute it permanently. And once the lecture is over, it's over. You may not have the opportunity to ask questions. So that's why I was asking each and every one of us to mute. When you want to say something, when you want to ask questions, you are mute. Is it okay? Is it okay? So it was at this third generation that generated less heat that generated, and it was at this third generation we start making use of operating system. Now we still have, just as we said, remember at the first at this initial time we said the third generation makes use of cables. make use of cables in the internal communication. So that's when we started making use of communication cable. So that's where we started having using cable for communication from local area, local connection, for local connection and what? For local connections and wires for local area network. So this is where we now have, at this time, we now have reduction in the loss in the cost of storage. Then introduction of many computers, introduction of mini computers, use of monitors and line printers started in third generation. Yes, somebody's raising up hand. Is somebody raising up hand? So these are the main features of third generation. The major innovation, as I said, integrated circuits, IC, the memory become PROM and DRAM. You have external storage. You have input-output devices, this was when this third generation was when the keyboard was introduced. The keyboards were used for input, while the monitor was used for output. Then the language will now have more high-level languages. Then we have a operating system. This is where it was at this third generation that complete operating systems were introduced. We have advantages. Third generation has its own advantages. Advantages of third generation is that it's smaller in size as compared to the second.
Sir, please can you go to the previous slide?
Yes. Is it the main features?
No, the one before the main features, sir. Yes, this one.
This one?
No, the one before this one, sir.
Characteristics?
No, I mean the main features. The main features, sir.
This is the main feature for the third generation. Is it what you are saying? Is it what you need?
Yes, thank you.
So we can move on. So we now have advantage. We have said the advantages of third generation. We said it's smaller in size as compared to second generation. It became computers became more reliable, more portable, less electricity consumption. Heat generation was there, and that is where we now have general purpose computer. Please take note of this word, of this number 6. General purpose computer. The use of general purpose computer started in the third generation. So that is where we started using general purpose computer. You said? Then we have disadvantages of third generation. Of course, now the air conditioning was required in many cases due to the IC. Then we have a very advanced technology. Very advanced technologies was required to make the IC. Okay, now we go over to the fourth generation of computer. This is the fourth generation of computer. What year is the fourth generation of computer? Somebody in the class?
19. Very
the fourth generation of
integrated
computers was from 1974 to 1984, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And what was the technology behind the fourth generation?
Because there's some
I should mute again. I should mute.
Yes, sir.
There's a chat section. Let's use it.
Okay, we'll continue. We are looking at fourth generations of computers. And we said the fourth generations of computers were from 1974 to 1984. Please, let's stop raising our hands. We are raising our hands too much. And the technology behind it was very large scale integrated circuits. That was the technology behind the fourth generations of computers. Now, you can see from the diagram, from the picture, from the slide, the fourth generations of computer. Then fourth generations of computer, we said the technology behind it was very large integrated circuit. We said these materials appear in the early 1970s. That's why we say 1974 to 1984. Their technology is based on the use of semiconductor device called cellular chips or microprocessor. And we also said that it is also known that one of the most important results of large-scale integration was the introduction of a microprocessor. Now, you should know that a microprocessor is a central processing unit that is fabricated on a chip. So it was at this level that the introduction of a microprocessor led to the production of microcomputers. Please don't always forget when each of those computers were introduced. For example, the microcomputers, as you can see, as I've underlined and highlighted both, that this is when the microcomputers were introduced from the fourth generation. Were introduced. And the fourth generation, we said over the time, larger units were introduced. Over the time, larger units were introduced to generate and improve performance. And these were the LSI, the VLSI, and the USI. So this modification was one that further reduced the size of computer components, leading to the manufacturing of small gadgets. So it is at this point, it was at this level, please always take note, this LSI, VSI, and USI. So it was this that led, it was from here that further reduced, it was at this level, it was because of the introduction of this that that led to the modification of computer system components. It reduces their sizes to smaller one. External storage, such as external storage, external storage we should know, such as the CD-ROM devices, optical discs, floppy disks, we are all part of this new system. So don't forget this. This is how external storage devices were introduced at this fourth generation. So what are the characteristics of the fourth generation? What are the characteristics of fourth generation? One, network facilities and introduction of microcomputer. Don't forget, we said it was at this generation, the fourth generation, that microcomputers were introduced. Yes. So we said it has this fourth generation that microcomputers were introduced. Then we have introduction of non-procedural languages, and we have wide varieties of software tools. Software tools like a database management system, word processing packages, spreadsheets, graph packages, and computer games. So it was at this fourth generation that all this came into existence. And we said also that some of the characteristics that it has flexible internal and external storage devices. Remember we said it was at this point, it was at this fourth generation that external storage devices such as the CD-ROM that we are using, CD-ROM drive, optical discs, floppy disks were introduced. So we also said that it makes use of a very large-scale integrated circuit, and we said that at these four generations they have very large storage capacity, and it was at this level that introduction of electronic mail and office automation system was introduced, So I hope we are following. We are in the class. Hello? Hello?
Yes,
We are following,
yes.
sir. We are
Yes, sir, we
following,
are
sir.
in.
Yes,
We're in
sir.
class, sir. We're in
Yes,
Yeah,
class.
we are
sir.
there.
At the previous slide, sir. Previous slide.
Yes, sir, we are in
Yes,
class.
sir, we
We're
are.
hearing.
So
Yes,
as
sir.
Yes,
We're
sir.
hearing you.
Yes, sir.
okay, as what which of the
Yes, sir, we are following.
Yes, wow.
which of the generation that introduced email and office
The
automation? Which
Uh,
generation.
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 Fourth generation.
generation?
Sir, please mute us. Mute us back. Mute us, please.
Tributes. Okay. Now these are the major features. These are the main features that occurred.
okay.
We have
Oh, yeah,
major
wait.
innovations. We have the main memory. We also remember we said that it was at this these are the main features of the fourth generations. We said the major innovation was LSIC and very large scale integrated circuit. This is where we started using a microprocessor, and that's why this is where microcomputer started. Then the memory, the main memory, the external storage came into place, like the floppy disks and hard disks. Then the input, output devices, monitor for output. Then we also have languages, for example, high-level language, which we already know. We use Fortran, COBOL, and more higher one came into existence. Then it was at this one we started using application software for games, for graphs, for others. Then the operating system, we started using MS-DOS and PC-DOS. Then this is a very good example. That's a very good example of a microcomputer. Then we move over. These are also the advantage, which you will get later on. The advantage is that the system, computers development became smaller in size. They became smaller in size and much reliable. No cooling system was required in many cases. In many cases, no cooling system was required. It becomes much faster computation, portable and cheap. The heat generated was negligible. And then this is where we now have totally generated this way we have total general purpose computer. This is where everybody will access it. Then there are disadvantages. The disadvantage is that at least very advanced technologies was required to fabricate the integrated circuits. That is the only disadvantage. Once a disadvantage. The integrated circuit definitely will require a very advanced technology. Then this is the fifth generation. The fifth generation is where we are now, present and beyond. Present and beyond, that's where we are. This is where we are, the fifth generation. Some people will also refer to it as a future. So this is fifth generation from present to future, from present to beyond. If you look at the screen, if you look at the diagram, you can see how it was. In 2005, you see how it was. In 2002, in 2010, you can see. 2005, you can see it was bigger a little. 2010, it became smaller. 2012, it became very, 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 very smaller. So I hope we are listening.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We are listening.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
you can see
Am I
Are you
hearing
hearing
you?
me? Yes, sir.
Sir, mute us back. Mute us.
Us back, sir.
Okay, let me move to the end of the
Sir,
class.
Off your mic, guys, please.
Okay. So these are the this is we are still on the fifth of future generation. The fifth of future generation, we said is present and beyond. This fifth and future generation most time is what we refer to as the artificial intelligence. Now, in these fifth generations of computer, they are data driven and not control driven, unlike the previous one in the first, second, I think third generation, first and second generations, they are not data driven, they are control driven. So in this fifth generations and future generations of computers, they are data driven, not control driven. So this is when artificial intelligence now play a leading role in the full development. So it was at this level we started experiencing the full development of generations of computer, in the sense that computers now make use of software, especially in the areas of software, make use of software. You say they were capable, or they are capable of performing functions like human experts. That means what human being will do, it has this generation, the fifth generation and future generation, that performing function like what human being can do, solving problems that require human intelligence. That's what we mean by human expert, solving problems that require human intelligence, judgment, insight, and experience. So it was at this generation, which we now refer to as artificial intelligence, that all the performing function of human experts, solving problems that require human intelligence, judgment, insight, and experience were introduced. Now we have characteristics of the fifth generation. Basically, the main characteristic is artificial intelligence, that is the ability of the computer to exhibit behavior just like an intelligent person. Of course, robots, robots, especially I remember during the period of COVID where a robot was designed to take temperature, to take all the symptoms of COVID-19. So when you are coming and it scans you, so you can see that we are in eras of future generations of computer beyond. Then we also have the expert system. We said an expert system is a system that future that is capable of making judgments and decisions like an expert. Know that one. Then you have speech synchronization, just as most of us are familiar with this one. Most of us we are familiar with this one. The production of sound that resemble human speech by electronic method. They say that the fifth generation is characterized by the acceptance of parallel processing. Please, you should take note of this word, parallel processing, backed up by hardware in the industry. So in the introduction of machines with hundreds of processors that could all be working on different parts of a single program. That's what we mean by parallel machine. Parallel processing, backed up by hardware in the industry. Then these are just a little example of what the future generation of computer look like. We said that it is made up of artificial intelligence software, which help, for example, the medical practitioner, the medicals, the physicians. The artificial intelligence software will always help physicians to diagnose diseases. They also help lawyers to plan. So these are very good examples of what the fifth generation or the fifth generation computer can do. So we'll move on. So if you look at it very well, these are the main features of the future generation, the main features of future generation. These are the main features. And these are the advantages of fifth generation. We said it's very large. It has a very large storage capacity. It said it has a long bit processor build, as it has artificial intelligence language was developed. So in general, in summary or at a glance, these are the generations of computers at a glance. You have the first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation. This is at a glance. It's when you look at it, it helps you to remember what we have done, Then we'll move on to the other one that has to do with classification of computers. Classifications of computer. We are looking at classification of computers. So computers are available in different sizes and types. Some computers are designed to be used by a single user only, whereas some computer can handle the need of many users simultaneously. So that's what we are going to be looking at. So computer also differ based on their data processing ability. So that means we are going to be looking at this classification at this level that has to do with sizes and types, and has to do with the data-driven ability. So in essence, or in general, the computers can be classified according to the type of data they process, the functionality, and the purpose. So this is a brief diagram that summarizes the classification of computers. This is a brief diagram that summarizes the classification of computer. Under the classification of computer, we said it is classified based on the following. Classification of computer is classified based on the following: purpose, data delivering, functionality. So under purpose, you have general purpose, you have specific purpose. Then under data handling, we have analog, digital, hybrid, and functionality. Functionality, you can see the functionality. Yes, somebody is raising up hand. I hope we will not make noise. This will not make noise. Yes. Yes. Somebody was raising up now. Any question? You want to say something?
Sir,
Okay.
please, I want to ask, will there still be another generation of computer, or this one is the one that will be?
That is why you are studying computer science, so that tomorrow you too, that is asking the question, tomorrow you too can come up, probably in your dreams or your thoughts, you can come up with another different type of generations of computers. That is why that is why you are a scientist, or that's why you have to, are you a scientist or you are a lawyer?
No, I'm not a scientist too.
Okay,
And I'm not a lawyer.
You are a scientist, you're not a lawyer.
I'm not a scientist too.
Okay, if you're not a scientist, you can bring out an idea. You can look into the future. You can look into the future and bring out another type of new generations of computer that is better than this.
All right.
So we are getting to a level where, how do I put it? That we must learn to pass machine.
Now we will be able to get the slides.
Yes, you get the slide. I will send it after the class. That reminds me. Please don't forget. Some of you, I think there are about 300 students on attending the class on the Zoom. So before you must submit your attendance. You must sign in your attendance in using your name, your matric number if you have, then your department. You have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We'll send it now.
Through the charts. In your chart, you can type your name, your matric number, and your department, isn't it? Then those of us that on YouTube live, don't forget to make your comments. Don't forget to make your comment on the selection column, on the comment selection on your YouTube live. Don't forget to make your comment. Well, don't forget to type in your name, your full name, your matric number, and your department. Please don't forget. Please don't forget. I will take the attendance for today's lecture. So somebody's raising up hand again. Somebody's raising up hand. Yes. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on. I hope you can see the classification of computers. Yes.
We on Zoom meetings that we have typed our name and
yes. those of us that on Zoom now, Zoom lectures, you type your name, your matric number, and your department. Just send it through the chat. You have done it before. Have you not done it before?
Yes, sir. I've done that already, sir. What
Then
about those that have not been able to generate their matric number, sir?
How? You don't know they don't have matric number. Is that what you mean? Or those of us that on
haven't, yes, those that haven't generated their matric number. Yes, sir.
Those of us that is it those of us that doesn't have matric number? Okay, yes. Okay, good. Use your name. Okay, yes, good. Use your matric, use your full name and your what? Your reg number, isn't it?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
And your department. Now let's continue. Let's continue with classification.
Yes,
let's continue with classification of computers.
Sir, mute us.
Yes, I will always mute. I will mute. So let's look at the classification of computers. Now, don't forget that classification of computer is based on three: the purpose, the data handling, and the functionality. Those are the three. Those are how computers are classified. And that's why I said computers can be classified according to the type of data, process, the functionality, and the purpose. Now, this is a little diagram to give a brief summary. Now, classification by types of data. Now, just as we said the type of data a computer can process can be classified as discrete and continuous data. Discrete, you know what I mean by discrete and continuous. So discrete data is countable data, while continuous data is measurable data. So continuous data is processed by analog computer, while the digital computer processes the discrete data. So you can remember, I hope you remember the type of data that is processed. So discrete and continuous data. And we said that the analog continuous data is processed by analog. So which means that it's analog that processes the continuous data, while the digital computer process what? Discrete data. So let's look at analog computer for an example. The analog computer operates on values represented in form of continuous variable. That is, values that changes frequently within short time interval. So in analog computer, a value is represented by a physical quantity that's always proportional to it. Such computers are commonly used, or they are used in hospital for measuring blood. Those of us that have measured our blood before, measure your heartbeat, the heartbeat of patient, you discover that some of those things uses what? Continuous, they use what? Continuous what? Data. And that's why we refer to it as analog computers. So example of analog computers include the slide rule. Then we move on to hybrid computer. Just as the word hybrid means, it means a combination of the two. He said the hybrid, okay, let me quickly go to the digital, but then come back to the hybrid. So the digital computer, remember we mentioned two at the beginning, we mentioned two: classification by types. We said continuous data is processed by analog computers, while digital computer process discrete data. Now, when you are talking about discrete data, digital computers are computers that process data, which is what? Represented in form of discrete values. When we say discrete value, we are talking about values, numbers, 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, by operating in data steps. This one, the data step, by operating on the data in steps. There's always steps in it. So discrete value occur at each steps in the operation. So we have classes or types of digital computers. That's why we have supercomputer, the mainframe computer, the mini-frame computer, the microcomputer. Now, when you talk of the hybrid, a hybrid computer is a combination of both. He said the hybrid computer we have developed combining the high speed of the analog computers with the flexibility of the digital computer. And he said they consist of analog and a digital computer connected together in a single system. So this type of computer, which we refer to as hybrid computer, are mostly used for scientific and technical applications. So that's what a hybrid computer does. Then digital computers, we said they are classified into supercomputer, mainframe computers, mini computer, and microcomputer. So let's quickly just look at those. We'll come back, we'll look at those types of computer. So let's look at classification by functionalities. We said based on the physical size, I underline it for us to always know, based on physical size, performance, and application areas. When you are talking about the functionality, you are talking about the physical size, the performance, and the areas where they are used. And we said the computers, we said that they are classified into 4 major categories. We said supercomputer, mainframe computer, mini computer, microcomputer. Yes, somebody's raising up his hand. Any question? You want to ask question? Yes? Somebody's raising up hand. You want to ask question?
Sir, what medium will we get?
Is that?
What medium will we get the slide?
When will you get the slide?
No, through what medium side?
Definitely you have somebody who will get the slide and share to you people. Who is collecting the slide and selling and sending?
You guys can be taking screenshots of all these things now.
But remember that the slide is just a guiding point. You didn't start from the beginning. Did you see the course materials? I said the course materials are fundamental and visual based. How many of you have been to computer science department to get the book?
I've been there.
Been to the Department of Computer Science.
It's available now.
Available now. How much is it, sir?
It's available now.
How much is it, sir?
You said? I said it's available now.
How much is it?
How much is it?
Yes. It's not available yet.
How much?
Are you sure? When last did you come to the department?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yes, sir.
What about today?
I will check today, sir, because they said that the price is just to be determined by the day of the faculty or something.
Okay, you are asking for the price, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How much is it?
Yes, sir. Somebody say, sir. The price, he said? Somebody's asking for the price. The price is 3,000. The price is 3,000.
The price is what?
Say the price is 3,000.
Yes, sir. The workbook and the textbook, sir.
Please mute everybody.
I should mute everybody. I said the price is 3,000. I said you can get in department of computer science.
Sir, please just mute everybody. Mute everyone.
Hello, sir.
Mute everybody, sir.
Please don't forget that there's a part you need to fill and to submit. I hope you remember. You have to fill and submit the workbook. There's a workbook that comes with the textbook. You have to fill and submit the workbook.
I can't hear you. Please mute everybody, sir.
Sir, when should we submit the workbook?
You have not bought. Have you bought? Okay, let's move on. This is where we are. Classification by functionality. We said when you are talking of classification by functionality, you are talking of the physical size, the performance, and the areas of application where it is being used. That will help us to know the functionality. And we said that in classification by functionalities, they are classified. Computers are classified into four categories. We say supercomputer, mainframe computer, mini computer, and microcomputer. So these are typically some pictures of all the functional classification by functionality. You can see the mainframe, microcomputers, mini computer, mainframe computers, supercomputers. But I will start with the main one, the supercomputer. We know the word supercomputer. Most times we call it the monster computer. He said the supercomputer is the most powerful of those four. That's why I said we should start from there. The supercomputer is the most powerful of those four categories. Now it has thousands. This time around, it's thousands. Thousands of users can be connected to it. Thousands of users. That's what we mean. Thousands of users can be connected, connected to. He said they are the largest, fastest, extremely fast, fastest, and most expensive computer that can perform hundreds of millions of instructions per second. Please take note of that. It performs hundreds of millions of instructions per second. Now, he said they have more than one CPU. They have more than one CPU. You know, this our presence, like our laptop, our desktop has one CPU, but in this supercomputer, they have more than one CPU, which contains instructions so that it can interpret instruction and execute arithmetic and logical operation. Please also take note, the speed of supercomputer is mentioned in flop. That's how the speed of a computer is measured. Always take note of this. The speed of a supercomputer is mentioned in flop. That is floating point operation per second. Then it has a storage capacities of millions of bits per chips. Then we have example of supercomputers. There's an example. If you Google it, you see the picture, you see how it look like. You have Cray 1, Cray 2, 3, Titan, Road. You can see. Then uses this type of computers that we refer to as supercomputers play a crucial role in the following field in quantum mechanics. Please permit me, if you have watched what do you call it, the Avenger Endgame, you will see the type of machine, the type of computer that we are used to teleport from one place to another. Those type of machines, those type of computers is what we refer to as supercomputer. It's used in quantum mechanics, it's used in weather forecasting, it's used in climate research, oil and gas exploration, molecular modeling. Yeah, somebody wants to say something. Somebody is asking. Somebody wants to ask a question. I thought we agreed that before we finish the class. Yes.
Excuse me,
Somebody
sir.
Yes.
Sir, please, can you just go back to the analog, the slide of analog? I didn't see it, sir.
Okay, this analog. Okay, this analog computers.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Okay, so we'll move on, Abi. We should go on. Then we have talked about the supercomputers, and I was trying to make us to know that if you have ever watched the end game, the adventure, the end game.
Hey, what is you gonna take your role now? Why did you not ask me first?
Daddy, please mute us, sir.
Sir,
Mute us,
please
sir.
mute us.
That's why I
Sir,
say it's
please
a
mute. Hello, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Oh. Can I have your office of this result? I'm on online class now.
Okay, I'll send you the brochure now. So we have seen the examples of and where they can use. The another one is the mainframe. The mainframe computer. We said the mainframe computer are larger machine with special wiring and environmental controls. Of course, this one also is a powerful multi-user computer capable of supporting many hundred or thousands of users simultaneously. Don't forget, the processing said a mainframe computer is used to process the large and huge amount of data in petabytes. So this type of mainframe computer, this type of computer are used mostly in the establishments such as university, banks, commercial houses, banks, commercial houses, organization, factory, etc. Don't forget, they operate at a speed measured in nanoseconds. In nanoseconds. You keep asking questions. We are going to keep asking ourselves questions today. Yes. Yes. Somebody is raising up hands. You want to say something?
Hello, sir. Please, what is the full meaning of that?
Zazu.
What is the full meaning? Full meaning of what? What is the full meaning of what? Okay, then this is mainframe.
You mentioned floating power.
From what?
Talk if you want to talk.
Floating point operation per second. Supercomputer, the speed is measured in flops. Supercomputer, the speed of supercomputer is measured in flop. F-L-O-P. Floating point operation per second. That is it. Then the mainframe, the speed is measured in what?
Nanosecond.
Are we following?
Yes.
And we said this type of what? This type of computer
Yes,
are mostly used in what? Universities, banks, commercial houses, organizations, even JAM. That's what JAM uses. JAM uses it, isn't it?
Yes.
So we move on. We already know the type of uses. We know the uses already. We said they are mainly used for government institutions and large companies for tasks such as large data processing, sensors, financial transaction processing, etc. Airways too using a mainframe. Yes, you have a question?
How can we classify computers that they use glasses?
They use
glasses. Glasses. Just like a screen touch, like instead of keyboards, they type on glasses.
So no, when you are classifying computer, you are classifying them based on speed and the storage capacity. So the one you mentioned just now, you can't classify it as a supercomputer because the speed is not floating point per second. You understand? Even the one you said now, said touch. How many users can connect to it? It's not just you and probably one or two person. How many people can connect to that type of computer? But not many, correct. So, but in supercomputer, thousands, that's what say thousands of computers can connect to it. So if thousands of users can connect to it, it means it has to be what? Very fast. Isn't it? It means it has to be very fast. It means it has to have a very good storage capacity. If otherwise, there will be issue. So the people that normally have this type of supercomputer are quantum mechanics. Remember, I give you an example that how many of us have watched the Avenger, the End Game? You can see when what's the name of that small one? Is it the ants want to teleport to another side? You can imagine. Yeah, Ant-Man, correct.
Ant-Man.
Yes, correct. So that's an example of a supercomputer. You can imagine the process. It's a per second, if you remember. How many seconds did he give to Ant-Man to come back? How many seconds? 10 seconds, 5 seconds? Do you remember? But you remember.
2 seconds, sir. 2 seconds.
Is it 2 seconds?
5. It's 5.
5 seconds. So that is why we said the speed of supercomputer is measured in flops, and the flood quality is per second. So it means for you to be able to go and come back in 5 seconds, the speed must be what? High. So that's why we call it supercomputer, and that's why we said it is used in quantum mechanics, weather forecasting, climate research, oil and gas exploration, and molecular modeling. Is it okay? Then you talk of a mainframe. Mainframe, we already said that mainframe that many people can connect hundreds or thousands of users simultaneously. And we said it's what? Nanosecond, isn't it? Now we said the people that uses it, government institution, large companies. Yes, and we gave an example. We said airline system uses it. In booking office, when you want to book office, you know, thousands of people, hundreds or thousands of people will be connected to it simultaneously, isn't it? Then you have the mainframe. This is the one, you have the mainframe, isn't it? The mainframe is the text size. This is the one that you are using every day in your house.
It's a mini computer, not mainframe.
Mini computer, sorry. This is a mini computer.
Sir, please mute us.
I should still mute us.
No.
Yes, sir.
Okay, after finishing this, we'll come back to it again. So this is a mini computers. We said is a multi-user computer capable of supporting up to hundreds of users simultaneously. Please always know this. He said the speed are rated between 1 and 50 million instructions per second. You should know this. You should know this. He said they are okay. He said they have primary storage in 100 to 300 megabytes range with access storage device. Then uses, of course, says it's generally used as a mid-range servers. These are the ones that are used for servers. When you want to get, these are the types of computer that are used for servers. And we said it's basically used for scientific and engineering computation, business transaction handling, and database management, etc. Then we have the microcomputers. We said the microcomputer has a microprocessor as a CPU. He said the first microprocessor computer was built of 8-bit chips. I think this is the one that we are using. He said this implies that 8-bit of data can be sent for processing into CPU. I think the later 16-bit system was introduced. So these are examples from 8 to 16. Then the latest computer of 32 bits. So which are known as what? Pentium. So these types of computer are the smallest, least expensive, and the commonest. This is the one we use every day. It has a small memory and less processing power. So we have types of microcomputers. We have the portable or the mobile one that we call the laptop, the notebook, the palm top, the Android device, and we also have the desktop. This is one that we are common with. This is one we use during our jams. When you are writing your jam exam, this is when you use the desktop. So in your jam, you use the micro computers. Is it okay? Then classification by purpose. Classification by purpose. Say there are two major classes. Remember, we talk about measured by type of data, types of data processed, type of functionality. Now we are looking classification by purpose. Basically, we just have two types of purpose, purpose: special purpose computer and general purpose.
I have a question, sir.
Okay, yes, I'm listening. Oh.
The computer
the what?
Mainframe or super.
The what? The super.
The computer in processing the mainframe or super.
Please, can I hear you well again? You said, is it the super? You're talking about the super? Are you talking about the super? Are you talking about the super?
Yes.
Okay, let's. You are not. I can't get you. I said, are you talking about the supercomputer? Okay, let's go on. Yeah? You said?
Just text
Is it
yourself.
used
Just text your question.
in the chat part?
Okay, special purpose computer. We said it is designed to carry out specific purpose. That's why it says special. That's why it's called special.
Yes, sir.
Yes, special. Special
Sir, I have a
purpose.
question, sir.
I have
Okay,
a question.
Yes, ask one by one. Yes.
Sir, concerning
How
all
many?
these highlighted things on the slide, please is it going to show when you send it?
When I'm sending it, of course, I will save it now. It's slide now. I will save it before sending it. Yes, another question. The first, I will save
sir.
it. I will save it and send it. Yes.
Thank you.
Sir, about the categories of computer, we do just have only 3 categories.
You have
just 3 categories. Like what I've been saying so far is about 3 categories of computer.
We mentioned supercomputer, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Supercomputer. Then what about this mainframe? That is 2.
Okay.
Micro.
Then what about
Micro and
this?
mini.
What about this?
So can we have a look at the mini slide?
Okay, we start again. This supercomputer 1, isn't it?
Yes.
Then up from supercomputer mainframe,
Mainframe.
Yes. Then mini, that is 3, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Then micro, that is 4, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Then I said under micro we have a personal computer, which you already know. We know this, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You tell me you don't know desktop. How did you write your JAM if you don't know desktop?
Hey,
We know desktop.
Classification by purpose.
Well,
Classification by purpose. We said special purpose computers, and we said general purpose computers. We said a special purpose computers designed to carry out specific tasks. Please, you must note this one too. It has an inbuilt what? Inbuilt program stored in the main memory. And it is called read-only memory.
Stop, please fill the group.
Mute it.
Okay, I'll mute everyone. Okay.
Don't, please.
So we said that the special purpose computer is designed to carry out specific tasks. And just as we said it have an inbuilt program stored in the main memory. And that memory is what we call read-only memory. Now, you should know what this read-only memory does. We said the content of the memory, which is the read-only memory, can be accessed and executed by the computer. So it is only the computer that can access it and execute it, but cannot be modified. It cannot be modified by the programmer or the user, which means that the user cannot modify whatever content is in it. So examples are computer designed for use. For example, your digital wristwatch. Your digital wristwatch, you can't change, you can access it, but you cannot modify anything inside it. So that is an example. Then we'll go over to general purpose computer. Just as the name specified, he said they are not specifically designed or built for any specific purpose. Their main memory is random access memory. Their memory is random access memory. So they solve various kinds of problems depending on the program or software loaded in them. Example are computers found in businesses, commercial, and scientific environments. So that's what we say. That's why I say it's a general purpose computer. Then lastly, before we move on, we look at the general characteristics of computers. I believe that many of us already know from this lesson, from what we have done so far, Some of us must have known what are the general characteristics of a computer. What are the general characteristics of a computer? You said one. You said?
It has a very high speed of operation.
Correct. We have mentioned that one at the beginning. Now we said it was. It produces highly accurate.
I have a question.
Yes, once the input is correct, any input is correct.
I have a
Yes,
question, sir.
yes. Who want to ask question?
Hi, sir.
Yes, I'm listening.
a question.
You said computer is categorized into special and general purpose, right?
I'm
So
not
you
hearing.
mentioned, sir, are you with me?
I'm listening.
So you mentioned some points under the special that you said it has only ROM, read-only memory, and
Yes,
for
special
general.
purpose computer.
Yeah, and for the general, it has random access memory, sir.
Yes.
But there are some computers of these days that have both the ROM and the RAM. So what are they categorized to?
Can you give an example of system that have both RAM and ROM? Each of them, there are systems that has it.
Example is our handable devices like our cell phone and our smartphone.
Okay. Now, special purpose computer, we said designed for a specific purpose.
Yeah,
it
so
doesn't.
it has.
Are you okay?
So it has read-only memory.
Yes, there are systems. There are computer that has RAM and ROM, isn't it?
Sir. Yes,
your
sir.
phone has RAM and ROM.
And ROM, yeah.
Yes, but what we are saying is that there are some systems that are specifically designed for that purpose.
Okay, sir.
There are systems that's why we call it special purpose computer.
Computers.
Classification by purpose.
By purpose, okay, sir.
By purpose, special purpose computer, general purpose computer. You are right. Just as you said, there are some systems like your Android phone, your phone that has both RAM and ROM, isn't it? Even
yes,
even our system, our laptop that has both RAM and ROM, but there are some that are designed for a purpose. Yes, somebody wants to ask a question? Okay, no questions. So nobody's asking question. Let's move on. Now we are looking at general characteristics of a computer. And somebody said that it has a very high speed of operation. Remember all the classification of computer, the super, the mainframe. Remember their speed. I hope you remember how their speed are mentioned. And we also said it produces a highly accurate result once the input is correct. Whatever you give, remember that's why I said garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you give to the system is what the system will give to you. If you give the student accurate input, it will give you accurate result. We said it is consistent. A computer is consistent and diligent in its mode of operation, which means it is what? Reliable. A computer is always reliable. All what we have mentioned so far, all computers we have mentioned so far, both from the first, the third, the fourth, the fifth generation, they are all reliable based on what you give to them. So he said it can store and process large volumes of data without the accuracy being affected. So that's one of the characteristics of it. It can store and process large volumes of data without accuracy being affected. Yes, somebody wants to ask a question? Yes, I'm listening. Anybody want to ask a question? I think it's almost time for questions. Okay. Okay. Summary. Somebody wants to say something? Summary of study session 2. This study session 2. So the summary. What have we learned? What have you known? What have you learned? So in this study session, you have learned one, the development of computer from one period to another. Have we not learned from the development of computer from one period to another?
Yes, sir.
First
Yes,
generation,
sir.
second generation,
Yes, sir.
generation, third generation.
And then fourth generation and the fifth generation.
Minister, I want to
Said
ask
he's
that
going to design a sixth
Bam
generation.
card,
As one of my friends, one of
general
us said he's going
purpose
to design
computer
a
according
sixth
to
generation.
ATM card, a general purpose computer.
Okay, then then I believe that we understood the technology behind the development.
Yes, sir.
What is the technology behind the first generation?
Vacuum tubes.
Vacuum
Tubes.
tubes.
Second generation,
Vacuum tubes.
Transistors.
third
Transistor.
generation.
Integrated circuit.
Integrated circuit.
Integrated circuits.
Very good. I think most of us participated in the class. Lastly, we said you know, at least you have learned or you have known the classification of computer based on what? Types of data
Data
process,
process.
functionality,
Functionality and
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 purpose.
purpose.
You have learned all this, isn't it?
I want to ask a question.
Learned all this one, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And this is a little question for us. Self-assessment questions. Can anybody tell us the answer to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Yes. Can somebody tell us the answer? The self-assessment questions.
Generation computers.
Yes. Punch card
Number one
were
is
first
second
introduced by who?
generation. Second generation, William Shockley.
Punch card was second generation. The
First
first
generation
computers
computers.
will be
Punch cards were invented by the second
high
generation.
integrated circuit, internal storage processor, hardware.
Vacuum tubes.
Not
Transistors.
well. Self-assessment question. Hope we have seen the test. We have seen the 10 assessment questions. Who will tell us the answer to number 1?
Number one, punch cards were first introduced by
I can
the
answer that.
second generation.
Tell us the
First
answer.
generation.
Punch card were
Second
invented
generation.
by punch card.
First
Exactly.
generation.
First
First
generation.
generation.
First
First generation,
generation.
sir.
First generation computers.
Okay,
First
first generation.
First
generation.
generation computers.
Intergeneration
Okay, I hope
computer
you
were made
understand
for
it.
First
Okay.
integrated
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
circuits.
sir.
First generation computers.
Third
Third
generation.
generation computer were built on
Yes.
what technology?
Integrated
Integrated
circuits.
circuit.
Integrated circuit. Integrated circuit.
You can say that you understand it now. For those of us present in
Yes, sir.
class, we understood. Internal storage of first generation computer are made of what?
Vacuum tubes.
Vacuum tubes.
Vacuum tubes. Vacuum tubes.
The internal storage for first generation are made of what?
Vacuum tubes.
Vacuum
Tubes.
Eh, oh.
Vacuum tubes.
Sure. Are you sure?
Yes, sir. Vacuum tubes.
punch card.
Vacuum tubes.
No. That's the question.
One. Please, this one.
Punch
Okay, the
card.
fourth one.
And number
Punch
three,
card,
That
sir.
one.
I thought it's meant to
punch
start
card.
with
Number 3. Exhibition number 3. Number 3 is punch card.
I
Miss
said you
Punch
miss
card,
it.
yes. I already missed it.
Give
I want
once
to
you
go and
miss
catch
it,
my
you miss
breath.
it.
That's
Give
why I
me that
didn't
one.
want to put it on fire.
No,
Like,
you
don't
have
put
to
it
go
on
and do
fire.
it
Okay,
yourself.
it's Punch card.
Number
Okay,
3 is
Card.
punch
card.
card.
Okay, do that one. Okay,
Punch
the
card.
first computer made available for commercial use was what?
Is
First
what?
generation.
A.
The second
generation.
generation.
Computer made available for commercial use was what?
Third
Why is it
generation.
number 3 and number 4?
You are not talking. All of you sound making. That is very good.
A.
Calculator.
Excuse me, sir. We are
Exactly.
talking.
Oh, you are not talking. No.
Electronic is sitting on a computer.
This
Computers
one that
are
I'm marking
used
question,
yours
you are going to answer in your second
now.
Excuse me,
So
You are
sir.
going to answer all
Artificial
these ones
intelligence.
yourself.
Artificial intelligence.
computers get Artificial intelligent. intelligence.
Which one is our teacher intelligent?
The
fifth one, generation.
7. Question number 8.
Yes.
Sir.
Then number 7 is number 7.
Number 7. What happened to number 7? Tell me.
The answer. They are widely used for checking of blood in the hospital.
Continuous
Measuring blood
computer
and
widely
acting.
used for what?
Continuous value.
Measuring blood and acting in the
Continuous
hospital.
value.
Computers are getting smaller every day because of the technological improvement.
Wait. This one
Because
is
of
what? Another
technological
computer
improvement.
are widely used what?
Measuring blood and acting in the
Continuous
Yes.
data.
What did I say there?
Continuous value. Continuous
measuring
value.
blood and acting.
Continuous value.
Continuous what?
Number 10 answer
Yeah,
again.
because
Continuous variable value.
improvement.
Variable.
Continuous variable what?
Continuous variable.
Continuous variable value.
Within short time interval.
Okay. We end the class. Any question?
Oh, number 3 is CPU.
Yes, I know. Do that one yourself. Any question? Send it to me.
Maybe you are
Question?
going to
I have a
Oh.
Any question? I want to end any question.
No
Number
question.
3
Question. I'm not ending the class. I'm ending the class.
Sir,
Any
how do we
question?
get the slide?
Sorry,
How
sir.
can computer be considered by data?
for technology, integrated science.
Slide.
Please,
Sir,
how do you
please
get
help
this?
us with the
Start the
slides. Please help
questions
us with the
yourself.
slides.
How do we get the slide, sir?
Who do I send the slide? Who do I send the slide to?
Send it through Dr. Femi Alamusa.
I'll send to him.
You can send it to the
Send it to the cost rep.
reps.
Course rep.
Send it through Dr. Femi Alamusa. He has a way of getting across to us.
I will tell him. Send it to the course rep. Course rep. Come back the course rep.
Send it through Dr. Femi Alamusa. He will get
I'm
the
waiting
slides
for
across to us. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the lecture.
Vedo.
Can you also send it to other students?
How can computer be classified by data?
Please don't forget to sign the attendance. Don't forget.